You know, can I just talk and hide behind a
Love it.
curtain?
We are good to go.
Like,
Excellent. All right. Well, hello and welcome everybody to Pitch Me Live. We are your host, Meg and Ted. Today's guest is a friend and a fellow podcaster. He's the host of The Power of Weird. He's also a sought after brand consultant and design brand engineer, I believe is his own words. And he
something
is
to that
an
effect.
enthusiast of being weird. I don't have any more intro for this guy because he's going to take it over from here. Welcome to the show, Dan the Man Levitan.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Very excited to be here. It's always cool to be amongst other creator folks, talking about stuff, doing things. So I feel I am in very good company. It's always fun when you're the little fish, especially when you're a big guy. You don't get to do that very often. So
Well, we appreciate you being here, Dan.
for sure.
So why don't we just get straight to the podcast and then we'll chat about what you and I have discussed off the air, if that's all right.
Yeah,
with you.
sure. Yeah.
So tell us about the Power of Weird and what that all entails and how it came to be.
Yeah, man. Well, the Power of Weird is definitely a passion project for me. I am I just turned 38. I'm an autistic entrepreneur. I'm a giant. I'm 6'7" and have weighed as little as 295 pounds as an adult and as much as 640. So I'm definitely I also am, was a comic book geek as a kid, all that kind of stuff, big into computers and technology, all this other kind of stuff. So weird, definitely, if you're looking for the embodiment of weird, there is no bigger, brighter star for that than this guy right here, yours truly. So, it occurred to me a few years ago that I was trying to find a way to be able to kind of, bring my story as well as the story of other people who kind of are living in their weird, as it were, kind of, being fully present in their lives. And I came up with this concept, which was initially an idea for TV, like a TLC type show where me, the giant guy, telling my story would go around and find these other weird, unique people that were living their best lives, interview them, video them, do this whole thing. And that's not off the table completely. But what I realized is there's Kevin Smith says something in a lot of the interviews he does. He says, you don't necessarily have to do the biggest version of the thing you want to do. Just find a way to do it,
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
the podcast thing is something that just was a natural fit. I had a death of someone really close to me. My fiance of 4.5 years passed away. And so I put it on the back burner for a while. Things the last few years have just kind of been reeling one way or another. And then, of course, COVID hits, all this kind of stuff. And so it took a while to kind of loop back around to the point where I was, where I was really able to put the time and energy into it, but also where doing something like this, at least for me, means an incredible amount of, emotional and personal vulnerability. Anybody who's listened to my podcast knows that I share a lot about myself. My first episode is one that, it goes through a lot of the traumas and different things like I experienced. It's a scripted one it's an installment series. It's the first one of 3. And it goes from me being, born the weird kid, in a fish out of water, and all the way up until I was, 20 years old, and some stuff that I went through. I know, Ted, you've listened to that episode, about that. But so it took me a while to get to the point where I felt like I was emotionally ready to be able to kind of put myself out there again, because it's not, it's not easy to be uncomfortable. It's not easy to kind of bare your soul like that. It's one of those things that it takes a lot more emotional, physical, spiritual energy than people realize. And so I needed to make sure that I was in the right frame of mind, in the right place to be able to do that. But since getting started with it, we've hit the ground running. We've talked to all sorts of different cool people. The idea behind the podcast is strictly that we're looking to highlight people that march to the beat of a different drum and who are living their best lives because of it. And when you look at the people we've had, we have all these different amazing people that are from all walks of life, and they could just as easily be a celebrity as they could be, the person that lives next door or the person in front of you in the grocery store line. And by showcasing these people that you might never know are there, but that are doing these amazing things, we hope to be able to instill the idea that that anybody out there, regardless of whether they're different or whatever their situation is, that everybody has the potential to be exceptional, and we want to be able to showcase that through the people we talk to. So that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of what it's all about. And I'm really excited to be able to, bring a lot of different subjects forward, a lot of different people doing a lot of different cool things already. And, and being able to bring that to the world and hopefully, make a difference in somebody's lives in the process.
Dan, you don't sound autistic.
Well,
When
that,
when I
that is
think
a
about,
common misconception.
well, that's what I was going to have you broach a little bit. What
Sure.
are some of the major, let's just go with the biggest major misconception you think
Well,
people have
so,
about it?
I mean,
I think of
autism first
Sheldon
and
Cooper. I think of Sheldon Cooper,
sure.
brawny white guy who
Uh-huh.
he personifies what I think of autistic
Right,
people.
right. Well,
But you're
the
6 feet
thing you have to,
tall,
well, right,
so
that's true.
we don't think of you, and we listen to you speak, and you don't sound
Sure.
autistic.
Well,
So,
so the first and foremost, autism is a spectrum. It's a very wide range of. I don't really care for the terminology, but the clinical term, they'd say there's a wide range of functional levels. When I was a kid, the term autism meant just the kid next door who was nonverbal. Like the very clear, very withdrawn into themselves, individuals. And again, it's a big spectrum. There are a lot of people like me who fortunately are smart enough and intelligent enough to be able to keep up in school and just kind of keep their head down. And again, I was born in 1983, so growing up in the 80s, going to school in the 90s and early 2000s, I was one of those kids that, as far as teachers were concerned, because I got good grades, I didn't really get in trouble, there wasn't any really need to look closer. I was one of those kids they could just kind of check off and say, okay, we don't need to worry about him. It's the curse of being either on the very low end or the very top end academically, is oftentimes they have to cater to the ones in the middle, and you really just don't get the attention that you need one way or another. But so I was able just to kind of roll through without there being really any kind of observation, again, because I wasn't a problem kid. I wasn't somebody that they had to worry about. That being said, the whole thing of being weird, the autism stuff for me was very obvious. If you knew what to look for. Um, Different sensory issues, like for example, I'm in my office today, and I've got stuff going on. We do all sorts of different design and different things like that, like we've got Toyota Prius is being wrapped in the other room, all this kind of stuff. And so for somebody like myself, I hear every little sound that's happening, every little every ray of light that's coming through, all this kind of stuff. It's funny, if I'm having a really stressful day and my kind of shields are down to a minimal level, I can hear the lights humming, and it absolutely drives me batty. It's because those things that most people can filter out, I have a really hard time with. And so that's part of it. And also too, socially, being on the spectrum, one of the classic things that you think of is having difficulty in social interactions. And so when I was a little kid, I didn't really hang out with any other little kids besides maybe the kids up the road to ride a bike or whatever. So it really wasn't an issue. But when I hit school, when I was in kindergarten, I had a real problem where, I wanted to be everybody's friend. I would talk to everybody. Everybody knew me. I knew everybody else, but I always felt on the outside looking in. And I wouldn't, it's one of those things where I would say something and it'd be close, but it wouldn't be quite right, in social situations. And so that was something that, I chalked up to just being a big kid, and I was just kind of awkward and whatever, when in reality, I just didn't have the same instinctual communication skills that everybody else had. Now, granted, it is unusual to find somebody on the spectrum that is very social because, as a rule, you kind of get burned when you're little a lot because you go out in good faith and then people shut you down. And sometimes you don't even realize it because you see the world much more literally a lot of times than other people do. It's very hard to be able to get past some of those constructs you have in your head. The concept of fair and unfair, things like that, that are hard for kids are way harder for people on the spectrum because we're not wired to see the shades of gray necessarily. So for me, I developed a cognitive process over the years. I call it my social process, where when I'm having a conversation with someone, I have this, 10 or 15 step little questionnaire that I go through in my mind every time of like, part of it is like, well, first off, is this person kidding or are they serious? Right. And if they're kidding, okay, sure, make a joke, whatever. But if they're serious, like, okay, why are they serious? And why are they serious? Okay, so does this really have anything to do with me? And it goes through this whenever something happens, my brain goes through this process of answering all these questions to determine what the proper response should be. And albeit it probably sounds kind of goofy to most people who are just instinctually regular communicators, but for me it's something where I live and die by that. Because
It
that's how
seems
I
like it could be
interact.
exhausting. It
It
sounds like
is.
that
Oh,
could really
it's
take a toll.
absolutely exhausting. Yeah. I always joke with folks that I'm the most extroverted introvert you'll ever meet because I love people, but man, when I'm tired, I'm done. you know.
Oh,
Right.
But yeah, so the thing about it is though is I would have these issues where again it'd be one of those things where you kind of think you got a handle on it finally, and then you say something and you're like, oh crap. You see the reactions on people, and granted, most of the time you don't necessarily catch those, but sometimes they're just so obvious that even somebody like me you'll see, and then you stepped in it, and then you got to start all back at square one. But so over the years, in different environments I've been in, I've always been the first to jump on trainings, to go to any kind of betterment stuff, learning new skills, learning new abilities, new objectives, all this different stuff, finding different ways to be able to do things. And what I've found is that a lot of the things that they teach you come in really handy. For example, in sales training, I learned about modeling and mimicking behavior and posture and tone of voice and everything like that. If you've never been a salesperson at all, I see Meg shaking her head. She knows what I'm
yeah.
talking about. If you've never been a salesperson at all, you don't know. But, if somebody comes in who is quiet and they're reserved and they're kind of sitting back and standing back away from you and are keeping their hands down and they're not very animated, like in order to make them feel more comfortable with you, it's important to be able to mimic and mirror back that behavior, that tone of voice, that soft spokenness, the slower cadence possibly of them talking, because that allows people to intuitively feel like you're on the same level with them. And so with all of this different stuff that I learned, I also saw the negatives of these big corporate environments, managers who are not really suited to be managers, promoted for the wrong reasons, people that don't work together well because they don't really listen to each other, people that don't set proper expectations, people that don't understand that communication is a two-way process, and it's important to be able to make an active choice to actually be in the moment and learn. And so after my last 9 to 5 job experience, which I'm on the record as saying the organization I worked for in general was really good, I was very grateful to have the opportunity to serve the clients I did. I was a program coordinator for a mental health agency. But the person that I worked for, just, for one reason or another, she just really, she'd done that job for a long time. I don't think she liked guys all that well. And me being, very good at what I did, but also a challenge, because I came in and said, look, I'm on the spectrum. If you need something, tell me exactly how you need it, exactly when you need it, and, what you expect of me, and I'll make sure it happens. But, despite that expectation was issued and very clearly issued, it was never it was more about just stirring up things and just seeing everybody squirm than actually doing anything. And there were days that I would take the long way home. I think I mentioned this to Ted before in this job, where I would take the long way home just to go along the river, which I wouldn't necessarily if I went the short way, because almost every day I'd feel like I wanted to cut the wheel and just go into the river so I didn't have to go back to work the next day. Again, not because of the people I was serving, but because of the people I was working for. And so when I left that job, I swore to myself, I'm never going to work for anybody else ever again, because there are too many variables. There are too many outside things that are out of my control, because these people just refuse to listen sometimes and refuse to learn. And, I needed to go out and do my own thing. And so I had a background already in design, brand design specifically, things that I'd done with different startups and small companies I'd worked with. And so I founded my own agency. I have learned a lot since then. I still do that. It's something that's always been fun to me. I don't know how many people drive down the road and see signs for businesses that just look horrible, and they go home and redesign them just for kicks and giggles, but I've always done that. So, I got into all of that. And then eventually, through working with my very, very dear friends at a company called Mount Juliet Taekwondo here in the Nashville area, who I do a lot of stuff with, including our lightsaber combat program, which I'm the co-founder of, which is, weird. They, through working with them and helping them with some of these communication issues and creating this absolutely wonderful environment that is all of them. They've done an amazing job in their place. And, and it's just something where this place goes so well. And the people are amazing now. I mean, they always were, but now they have the tools to communicate and all. It inspired me to really move forward more with the management consulting and training, which allowed me to create what I call the Spectrum Perspective Training Program, which is my, there are two ways that I'm moving forward in the world, making a difference. One is by the power of weird, letting folks know that being weird is not just okay, that it's pretty freaking awesome, and you need to be able to do your own thing. Regardless, if there's one single thing you do in life, you need to be yourself and you need to do what you do. And then the other is being able to go into workplaces where people are having these issues that I had, and being able to teach them what I've learned as leaders, a cognitive process to be able to break things down, not to go instinctual and not to go emotional, but to make the workplace a better place for people, so that, we can have happier individuals. They can go home at the end of the day, have happier families, and be able to encourage, better communication and better understanding across the whole gamut of people. So, I mean, that's really, that's the passion that's there, is that people need to be the best that they can be. And, being autistic and having had so much trouble with communication over the years, I feel like it's only natural to take what I've learned and turn it around and try to make the world a little better place, and, make an income doing it, because, I'm the one and only person in the universe that has this perspective. And, you can't find it anywhere else, which is, kind of cool.
Well, speaking of making the world a better place, let's talk about the show that you and I have discussed.
Yes.
What do you want to do?
Well, so as the which one are you referring to? Because we've had some
blue
good
collar. I like the blue collar.
Yeah. So I have a good friend of mine. He's like a brother to me. I work with him a lot. My office is located in his larger shop. His name's Keith Mosley, and Keith is a second generation BCE, or blue collar entrepreneur for short. That's what it stands for. Not for short, for long, blue collar entrepreneur. And the idea behind, when I started my agency, when I started out on my own, my goal was to be, to work with, like all these like pretty businesses doing stuff for, restaurants and boutiques and recording studios and, concert festivals, all this other kind of stuff, athletic events. And it never occurred to me that we have this huge portion of the population that literally keeps the world running, who are blue collar entrepreneurs that are very underrepresented, and people just don't see, that they're there. But every time your toilet flushes, that's because a blue collar entrepreneur made it happen. Every time that you're able to drive on a road that's smooth, or, that exists, period, that's a blue collar entrepreneur that did that for you. Anytime that you have your roof replaced, or you see a house that someone lives in or that you might live in, a blue collar entrepreneur did that for you. And that makes the world go round. And so working with my friend Keith, who I mentioned, who we got linked up shortly after I went out on my own independent, I have done a lot of things I never thought I would do. I've designed race car wraps, of all things. I never thought I would do race car wraps. It was one of those things that was not on my list of things to ever do, but it's very cool now that I've done them. But I also have seen this world of blue collar entrepreneurs, the roofers of the world, the plumbers, the landscape folks, the HVAC people of the world, the electricians, all these people who are out there who own their own businesses that do all the same things, when it comes to payroll and accounting and marketing and also the kind of stuff that your big $20 million seed round startups in Silicon Valley do, but they do it all on their own. They do it with no help, no resources. And, and they're lucky to be able to afford to wrap their vehicle at times, which is a lot of stuff that Keith and I do. So what we've talked about, what Ted and I have talked about, and Keith and I have talked about, is we're going to be introducing a new show called BCE Nation, for the blue collar entrepreneur. And the idea is much like the Power of Weird, where we're going to go and we're going to have all of these business leaders who are all blue collar entrepreneurs. And we're going to have Keith, the ultimate blue collar entrepreneur, great guy, fun to talk to, has never met a stranger. Anybody between the ages of 20 and 60, female-wise, typically have a crush on this guy. I always think it's hilarious when he says, oh, well, I'm married, I'm sorry, and they get all down. I make sure to tell him, well, he's a twin, right? Which he is. And they say, really? I'm like, yeah, but the twin's married too. And, that kind of thing. But so, this very charismatic guy on the other side, and I'll be a co-host and a producer for this, and obviously the creator behind it. But, where we talk to these people who, whether there be a brand new blue collar entrepreneur and they've had a good success, have done something different, or whether there's somebody who started as a blue collar entrepreneur in the 60s or 70s and have created grown their business into a multi-million-dollar operation or more, but they're still the blue collar guys. They're still the guys that get out there, man. They're still the guys that do it. And part of that is even that we're going to do, blue collar entrepreneur, BCE Nation resource roundtables where we have, insurance specialists, where we have design specialists and brand specialists like myself, where we have folks like Keith that do mobile marketing, wraps, maintenance, all this different kind of stuff, where we actually have people who are there as resources, where we'll have folks, write in with questions, and our resource roundtable will be able to answer them and provide free advice and options for people to be able to do things they never knew existed. Even, business banking, different things like that. There's lots of programs out there that all of these guys would more than qualify for, but they don't consider themselves entrepreneurs because they've never been told, hey, you're an entrepreneur, you're killing it. They think that's a Silicon Valley thing. So we're looking to change definitely change the conversation there. We definitely want to bring that into the forefront and say,
and perception.
Yeah,
I think you're looking to change perception too.
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Yes,
not a problem.
So it is. I mean, it's I feel very fortunate, again, Keith is like a brother to me. I love the guy. And I feel fortunate to be able to become his friend and work with him. But even more so.
For just a second, Dan, something that's popped into my mind. Tell me about the twin situation caught my attention. Are you guys going to do anything with them being twins?
I mean, you never know, man. I mean, it's one of those where, Keith would be the first one to tell you that he is the more polished of the two.
But that could work if you have one polished and you have one raw.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, definitely, both of Keith's brothers are blue collar entrepreneur types. His twin is a home builder. So, it's definitely something where we'd have him on to talk to him, that kind of thing.
Wait, did you say a home builder?
Yes.
Are they flipping homes? Can they get
No, they build new homes. Like he's a new home builder.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I think folks that are in that world dabble in a little bit of everything. But,
yeah.
Right.
But it is something. It's actually interesting to see the two of them. They're what's called mirror twins, which is like a small percentage of actual twins where, if they're looking at each other, like say if one person's left eye is slightly lower, well, the other person's right eye will be slightly lower. Like they're like mirror images of each other.
Right,
Keith is left-handed, his brother's right-handed, that kind of thing, which is interesting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but again, he's a second generation blue collar entrepreneur, and the person, again, I'm the epitome of weird, and so I'm more than fine being out there being the poster boy for weird. But when it comes to blue collar entrepreneurs, I have a lot of passion for them. I have a lot of, energy and enthusiasm for what they do and being able to support and highlight that community. But if there's a guy to represent them, it's him. He's the poster boy for that.
Now, when are you guys looking at launching this venture?
Well, we're not 100% sure. We're working on getting things together. I mean, the problem right now, truthfully, is that business in his shop is so good right now.
Yeah.
That, because
there may be a show there, Dan.
Oh, I think so too.
With you guys wrapping the cars.
Oh, I've had that thought also. Yeah.
That might be. there's a couple of, these are things that are just sticking out. I like twins. I like the car wrapping. But obviously, we're going to continue to
Yeah,
get
yeah. Well, wait till
questions.
you
But
meet
I'm
Keith,
just
man. I mean, some guys are part of his fan club too. So, it
okay.
Yes,
happens.
can't wait.
Okay. Because I'm thinking, the Property Brothers, they're
Oh,
twins.
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That could be an angle.
Yeah, yeah, I gotcha. Well, the biggest thing is, with so what's happened now in the world of stuff like what we do is with COVID happening, a lot of people that are freelance people have either just completely burnt out and fizzled, or they've been really, really hurting. But there have been a few places who have been able to kind of weather the storm and have come out, doing better because of it. And Keith is somebody who I definitely admire how he does things. He pays for things in cash. He doesn't have any credit accounts, anything like that. He's got at any given time hundreds of thousands of dollars out in equipment and parts and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of what he does is work with car dealerships that don't pay for 6 to 8 weeks until after they receive something. So he's been able to weather this because he hasn't had to worry about late payments and fees and all this other kind of stuff. And he's been able to maintain a good level of business throughout COVID. I mean, not year over year, it's not what the growth isn't what it had been the few years previously, but he's managed to weather it pretty well. And now that people are starting to come out of it for one reason or another, getting vaccinated or just kind of pushing back out into the market, there are a lot of people in the blue collar world who they still are doing stuff, man. And the ones that are left have less options now to be able to go to get some of these things done. And so somebody who's been able to stick around and who is kind of a pillar of the community anyway, he's been able to capitalize on that, which is great. Because, he's got the reputation for doing good work and, doing things in a timely manner, being straightforward, good quality materials, all this kind of stuff. And now that there's less competition in the market for the moment, because a lot of those businesses have closed, we're absorbing some of that now. So that's been the only issue of like, okay, when do we take 10 minutes to sit down and record this, or when do we take an hour a week to record that, and that's been the only difficulty that we've had so far.
Let me jump back to something for a second. What is his relationship with these car dealerships? What does that look like when he's wrapping the cars for the dealers? Is he
it just depends, right? So it's because what his business started out as was like auto trim, if that makes sense, doing like leather interiors and wheels and tires, lift kits, that kind of stuff. And then excuse me, he moved into doing like vinyl graphics. Like they would, car dealership would say, well, hey, we've got 10 Camaros on the lot and we're trying to move them. Could you put racing stripes on 5 of them? That kind of thing. And so, and with that over time, he got into like fleet graphics and wrapping vehicles for companies like 31W Insulation. If you guys have ever heard of them, they're the largest supplier or largest independent supplier of Owens Corning fiberglass insulation in the world. We actually now, excuse me, I'm sorry. We wrap all of their vehicles. If you ever see a 31W Insulation truck in all the states they're in, I designed the wrap, and we've done hundreds of them, so it's just one of those where, we, with car dealerships, he still does a lot of the trim stuff, but then if the dealership themselves is getting something done, they're getting signs, or they're getting, window coverings, or they're doing like a courtesy van, or they have a customer come in that's a commercial customer that's buying 4 or 5 trucks or something like that. They'll say, oh, well, go down to Keith's, and they'll, design you up something really good. They'll get you started, get you, your trucks done, all that stuff, and they roll it into the price of the vehicle that's, financed.
That's a lot to work with. My mind is spinning on a couple of different things that you've spoken about.
Sure.
I'll tell you what, why don't we end up wrapping it up here in a minute and let me think about this. You and I will be emailing
Yeah,
and
sure.
back and forth, because when we spoke, this is the first time I'm hearing about some of this. So that's good stuff.
Yeah. Well,
I'm just trying to figure out how to package it and who to pitch this to, but you've given me some
I got
options.
you. Well, I think, the thing about it is what he and I have come together on, as far as, we've tossed around a lot of different projects over the years. And the thing about the BCE Nation with blue collar entrepreneurs is like, we both feel like that's something that more than anything else needs attention drawn to it. We live in an age where, people my age and younger, especially, and some that are older too, we grew up where the expectation was 100% of people were going to go to college, get university degrees,
Right.
become, writers or psychologists or teachers or whatever the case may be. But now that that's been the way it's been for 20, 30, 40 years, we're in a situation now where we can't find people to run forklifts at warehouses, and they're paying
Yep.
$50, $60 an hour because they can't find people who A, know what they're doing, or B, even know that it's an option.
Absolutely.
And so it's important to be able to look and say, these are just as important. And, language, I'm a firm believer in, that people's words can't hurt you unless you let them. But at the same time, language still has a lot of power behind it.
Sure.
And when we talk about and we say, oh, well, yeah, that HVAC guy owns a small business, but hey, Jack Dorsey, he's got this big old startup. He's an entrepreneur. He's got Twitter. He's got, or whatever the case may be. I think I got his name right. If not, I apologize. I like Twitter. I don't mean to offend. But the thing is we talk about these groups of people very differently, when in reality, it's all one group of people. Anybody with the spirit and the drive and the willingness to go out there on their own and make something of the world, utilizing their skills and talents, should be given the respect that is due. And we should also be letting everybody in the world know, people that are, young people, old people, whatever, they need to understand that, we used to make fun of in school the idea of, being a garbage man, or being a, somebody who cuts grass, or somebody who builds fences or puts on roofs, because that was like grunt work, but in reality, there is nothing more noble than somebody who's willing to go out there and put in a hard day's work to be able to take care of people and to be able to feed their family. And we need to be able to spread that message far and wide with the BCE Nation Project, because people need to understand that there is a lot that there is a lot of good behind there. And also, the people who are doing that need to understand that they're valued also, and that they are recognized as what they are, which is entrepreneurs as well. They're not just out there, grinding, and they may not care, and they may care a lot, but regardless, it's one of those things where the rest of us need to understand what kind of contribution these folks make to the society that we live in.
Totally agree.
Yeah, we absolutely agree. Hey, Dan, why don't you tell us where we can find you at? And Megan is going to bring us home.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, so if you want to find me, obviously if I'm walking down the road, I'm pretty easy to see. So that's one thing. But if you want to find me online, that's a little bit of a different story. I've still got a big shadow, but not as big as, if you were sitting across from me. You can find me easily on thepowerofweird.com. That's got information to be able to contact me. We've got where you can nominate a guest. So if you know somebody that's weird and you want to see them on our show, go on and nominate them. You can nominate yourself if you want to. It's okay. We even ask, are you nominating yourself? No problem. You can also, if you're interested in the training program, which, the whole idea is for small to large businesses, about just going in and, creating what the tagline is, we create leaders from managers and we turn leaders into rock stars. So, it's one of those where we really, make a difference there. You can find that at thespectrumperspective.com. You can also call our 800 number to get more information for the Spectrum Perspective at 888-488-1129. And then, even though there's no recording or anything up, we do have a phone number now for the Power of Weird. And that phone number is 833-RU-WEIRD. That's 833 letter R, letter U, and the word weird. You can imagine there's a question mark. Just don't try to put it because it's not on the keypad. But that'll get you more information and that kind of stuff too. And yeah, so just reach out. Definitely, I'm very easygoing, very easy to talk to. I'm a good listener, even though I've talked a lot today. And I'm all about meeting new people, connecting with new people. And like I said, thepowerofweird.com and thespectrumperspective.com. Come and take a look. Definitely listen. The Power of Weird is on pretty much every major podcast place that you can find: Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Audible, I'm sure I'm not thinking of 20 other ones that we're on. And also from your mobile phone, if you're one of those people who listens to podcasts while you drive, just go to thepowerofweird.com, literally scroll right past the logo, and all of those links to your favorite podcasting places are right there, and they'll open up in the app, and you just start listening. And definitely keep your ears peeled as well. Episode 16 of The Power of Weird coming up features none other than Ted here. And so that's a great conversation that we had. And if you think he's weird now, wait till you hear him on the podcast.
Oh, now I can't wait to listen.
The cat is out of the bag.
No, he's weird.
I had a great time. It was incredible.
For
It was
sure.
absolutely incredible. I had a wonderful time doing it.
And I do have to, one more thing to throw in. Any of you that remember Bobby's World from back in the day, that was Howie Mandel's cartoon, Ted wears, just like Uncle Ted, he's got the Hawaiian shirts. So like, just, make sure anything you tag with us. So of course, hashtag weird is in for the power of weird, but then also anything you see from Ted, hashtag Uncle Ted, straight up. And there you go.
Was it my idea to have this guy on here, Megan? Was that?
I love it, and it was a great idea. Dan, thank you so much. Your story is incredible. Your love of small business speaks to my heart, because I also love small business entrepreneurs, and I love what you said about how language matters and the way that we talk about people, no matter what business it is that they're doing. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, you guys. If you are looking for us on social media, we are at Pitch Me the Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and pitchmethepodcast@gmail.com. If you have people that you think belong on our show as well, we are always also taking nominations for yourself or someone else too. So Dan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for having me. Oh, that's my little bit of Southern coming out. I apologize.
Thanks, Dan.